Thank you all for joining this month's Alley Talks. Each month we get together to learn about a variety of accessibility related topics. So make sure to follow us on Twitter. We're Alley Talks, A11yTalks, to keep apprised of our upcoming sessions, our speakers, and other relevant information. Also, make sure to subscribe to our YouTube. We always make sure to post these videos after the fact. If you can't make a session, just make sure to log on to YouTube and check it out later. For all of those attending, please do me a favor. Keep in mind the session is being recorded. So if you have a sense of humor like mine, please just tuck that back in for the next hour or so, and it will be much easier to put on YouTube. So with that, if you have any questions throughout Abby's presentation today, please put them here in the Zoom chat or just post them on Twitter with pinging Alley Talks with that. And we'll make sure that your questions are put in at the end, assuming there's time. So today we are lucky enough to have with us Abby Kingman. She's over from Last Call Media, and she's going to be doing a talk about accessibility, newbie to ninja, discussing her journey. And in truth, I was fortunate enough to hear her a couple of years ago, and she put up with me almost heckling in the back. No, seriously, I was in awe of her then.
Not how I remember, but
I was in awe of her then. Her incredible presentation, Abby. You were wonderful then. You've been wonderful since, and I'm really excited to hear you speak today. So, are you ready to roll?
I am so ready.
All right, let me shut off my video and stop talking.
Great. Okay, so I'm going to stop the video too, and let's see. Is it true that now people can see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, great, super. I live in the country where internet bandwidth is limited, so welcome everybody, and I'm really excited to be here, and thank you so much, Donna, for the invite. Yeah, that was a really fun presentation that I was giving a little while ago, and it was sort of an accessibility primer, and that's kind of where I was on my journey at that point. And recently I thought that it would be interesting to talk about how to move away from square one, about how to take those next steps and to think about what am I doing or what can I continue to do to sort of up my game in the accessibility arena. And I thought it would be fun to just kind of make a little 10-step program to share with people who are also interested in moving past the basics or just trying to get going in accessibility and get a little bit of momentum going. So this is about the fact that accessibility is a great big topic, and it's really easy to feel sort of puny and overwhelmed. So I'm going to give a 10-step plan for breaking it down into little bite-sized chunks and how to get going. And at the end of the talk, there is a little PDF that I can share that will have a summary of each one of these ideas. So if you sort of lose track partway through or have to go away for a while, that will be available at the end. There will be a code, which I don't know if it will come through on video, but there will also be a bit link at the end, and you'll be welcome to download that. So let's get started. So I think the first thing that is really important, and it seems maybe a little bit basic, but it can be hard to do, is to ask questions. There are a lot of people out in the world who have a ton of information and ton of knowledge about accessibility, and the WCAG is really dense in some places, and if you try and really dig in, you can really get stuck. So I found that it's super helpful to get involved in some of the online communities, and I don't know if other people have experience with online forums in other places. They can be sort of snarky and hostile and not necessarily productive. But the people in the forums that are focused on accessibility are so generous and so passionate and so willing to share. And since there's so much to learn and some really complex subject matter, pretty much everyone has a question from time to time, and even the experts. And again, because there are so many smart people on these forums, it can be a little bit scary to come in and ask a question, especially if you are sort of a beginner, but it's really okay. In fact, so some of the forums that I really enjoy taking part in are the WebAIM forum, which is a public forum. Anybody can join that. The International Association for Accessibility Professionals has a members only forum called their Connections. And then there is also an accessibility Slack channel. I am less active in the Slack channel because I find that it can be a little bit overwhelming because there's so much information, there are so many great channels, and such a constant ongoing conversation, where these other forums you can just check in from time to time or get a digest email. For me, since I tend to get distracted pretty easily, I find that a little bit of a better way to digest all of the conversations. But last fall, there was a new member in the IAAP forum who posted asking, are there any user groups that I can join to discuss doing a manual audit of a website who are located near Omaha, Nebraska? I have a lot to learn, and I don't want to burden this group with my questions. And I'd appreciate it if somebody could point me in the right direction. And so immediately people started writing back with responses like, this is the purpose of this community, for people to ask questions so others learn as well. Agreed with Sean, please ask questions here. I might be able to learn and share. Third, I agree with the rest of the folks. This is a great place to ask those sorts of questions. So right away, it became really clear that people are interested in sharing and learning, and there are no questions that are really too basic. I've seen some real experts ask questions too, and when the new version of WCAG came out, or the new expansion of WCAG came out, some of the questions that went back and forth about success criterion 135, which is identifying input purpose, were so dense, and I had no idea what was going on. But it was really great to see that even the experts don't always agree on everything. So there's a ton to learn from people who are experts, and you can also feel welcome to ask your own questions. So jump in on those forums. After that, another great idea is to start writing. And that's something that I started doing a little while ago, and I post blogs on the Last Call Media website from time to time. And it's a great way to consolidate what you've been learning. And as you try and summarize your ideas in writing, it's also a great way to expose the things that you really didn't quite figure out yet. So there's something about trying to condense something and then expand it back out again that really helps to make things clear. At least that's how I find it to be. If you are able to post the things that you write on a social media or a blog, another great thing is that makes it easy to find that clear summary again. So if you remember that, oh, I wrote a post about that topic 5 months ago and I can find it here, then that can be really helpful sometimes. Another thing to remember is that you do know some stuff. And there are some people that don't know all of that stuff. And I personally have found that sometimes it's easy to think that, well, since I know this stuff, this must be things that everybody knows, so why should I write about it? And you don't have to make a new scientific discovery to make it worth posting about. You have your own unique voice and your own experience and your own audience, either through your company's followers or your own social media followers. And it's very worthwhile to do that. So, you probably will help somebody else if you get out there and write something. Sometimes I get started researching a topic and get excited about it and start writing, and then I have kind of a struggle trying to finish it, but I've already promised my coworkers that I'm going to have a new post about that, so then I have to finish it up and do it. So that's been an interesting process, but I always have fun digging in on new topics, and some of the topics I've posted about have been things like accessibility for comics, accessibility for social media, color blindness, and designing focus states. So whatever you find yourself kind of getting involved in, this is a great way to kind of put it in a package and put a bow on it. Strategy number 3 is to go ahead and make your own audit template. And this is a little bit about just owning your own process, because there are a ton of templates and checklists out there on the web. And I think that's really a great place to start, but I also think ultimately you may find that it's better to create one of your own. If you are anyone who is going to publish a template checklist out on the web is going to include every single part of the WCAG. And I find that when I'm doing an audit, that isn't the best way to try and do the work. You know the way that you work. the best. You know the way that your company works the best. For example, we don't do a lot of work with forms, so we don't do a lot of form markup. We don't do a lot of table markup, so I can skip over parts like that. And I found that it's helpful to construct a template that really reflects the tools that I use when I do an audit and my own workflow. So like I'll start with some automated testing because that's quick and easy. And I'll do some verification of contrast errors because the tools don't always do that very well if they're background images. I'll hit some keyboard testing, then I'll do some screen reader testing, and I'll do some tests for zooming and reflow. So I have a template that's structured around the way that I do audits and the way I tend to do a selection of pages and different interactions and processes. So getting something like that together for yourself will make it a lot more efficient to get through the way you do work. And capturing your results in a consistent format is also really helpful for the people that you're working with because that will help them get used to seeing how they'll be getting your feedback. Then you probably want to make a short list of some of your favorite tools. There are so many great resources out there. And if you're like me, you probably have hundreds of bookmarks and different places. And if you find yourself in the situation of needing to do a certain check and you think, oh, I know exactly where I can find the tool for doing that. I found it and I don't remember where it is. So yeah, I've found that there are advantages to a few different processes for organizing things. I have some browser folders. I have a collection of bookmarklets. I also have a Confluence space, and that is something that I use to share information with my coworkers. I have some screenshots in there and some annotations. That makes it easy, especially with things like color contrast tools, to remember what each one looks like when it's loaded up. So that is really helpful. And then a great note-taking app can help a lot too. And I use one called Notational Velocity, which is a Mac app, but I know a lot of people really like using something like Google Keep or Evernote or something that you can use to store clips. But being able to put your fingers on that specific resource you need comes in so handy when you're on a conference call and somebody says, so-and-so, can you just go and see if this is going to be okay? If you are able to actually pull that up, that can be a real boost. This one is a little bit tricky, and I've struggled with this one a bit. The engage with your coworkers. So the chances are good that your coworkers are not thinking about accessibility nearly as much as you do. Shocker. Finding a way to help them think about it more can be helpful for you, for them, and for your organization as a whole. I know that Last Call Media has a real strong commitment to making accessibility one of our core principles, but we're also a distributed company, so I don't have a lot of face-to-face interaction or just those casual interactions with coworkers that can make it easy to exchange information or share something that you're excited about. So we do have an accessibility Slack channel, and I'm always throwing stuff in there. I get excited about all kinds of things when I'm out on the internet looking up accessibility information, or I'll stumble across something. So I'm not sure if people think it's funny or if they think I'm weird or if they think it's interesting, but I'm in there just all the time. And sometimes I get some great responses, or somebody will say, oh, I saw that. And to me, that's really helpful and validating because it helps me realize that people actually are thinking about accessibility, even though I don't get a lot of real direct feedback about it. Another thing that I tried recently was to just set up a bi-weekly accessibility check-in, because I thought people might want to share some of the things that they found, or talk about a little, maybe a component that they had to work on a little harder to make it accessible, or some testing they did, or a tool that they found. And I found that it helps if you can just set it at a regular time, make it short. If you have a half an hour set aside and you don't have a whole half an hour worth of stuff to talk about, everybody gets a little bit of found time. But you can usually think of something to talk about in a pinch. I can cruise Twitter or go through the Slack channel, find an opinion that somebody posted recently about React, That's usually good for some discussion. So I think any opportunity that you can take to engage coworkers in a discussion about accessibility. When we were supposed to talk about our goals for the coming year, mine was to get accessibility into the mix both early and often. So I'm trying to get accessibility into our projects as much as possible. Your clients also don't think about accessibility nearly as much as you do. Shocker. So you can help them out too. A great way to do that is to include accessibility information and resources in your client documentation. Some of the things to think about would include putting in information about alt text, how to enter it, why it matters, what makes good alt text, put in a few resources. Also how to add transcripts to video and how to mark up the iframes, what makes informative link text other than click here, information about putting useful names on files that they upload. A lot of RFPs, I find, include requirements about accessibility, and I think in some instances, people are saying that they want an accessible website, and they do, but they think that it's somebody else's job and that it's just a once and done thing. So if they make it a requirement in their RFP and the contractor delivers it, then they're done. And in fact, content is just so important, and that's where so many sort of accessibility barriers crop up. So if we give our clients we're giving our clients the tools to be able to post accessible content on the internet, but the content itself is really in their hands. So if we give them additional information on how to use the tools, then that can try to help. I know that there have definitely been cases where I have been part of the launch of a new site, and then once they have started adding content, I thought, wow, the accessibility of the site was a lot better before they started adding content. So this is a great way to sort of counteract that. I've also realized that the days and weeks leading up to a new site launch might not be a great teaching moment. So people might be kind of stressed out at that point and be thinking about other things. So having information written out in the documentation is a way of making sure that they have access to that. So just be sure in the meetings to make sure that they know that it's in there. And probably someday they'll have to come back to that documentation when they need to remember how to work with a certain content type, or there's a reasonable chance that there will be a new coworker sometime and that person will probably need the documentation. So making sure that information is in there is a way to make sure that it gets reinforced over time. This comic on this slide, this cartoon that Molly made looks exactly the way I felt when I passed the CPA-CC exam. And studying for a certification like the IAAP's CPA-CC exam, the Certified Professional in Accessibility Core Competencies, or the WAS, that's a great way to just learn more and also to discover more learning resources. So the CPA-CC is sort of a foundational level certification, and the WAS is more of an intermediate level of detail. It has more technical knowledge about the WCAG guidelines. And if you are in it for all of the fun, you can do both of them and get the CPWA certification. But the best thing really about getting the credential was not just the letters after my name or that really cool certificate or the admiration of all of my peers. It really was all of the new stuff that I learned when I was preparing for the exam. And I have to say that in the process of studying for that exam, it really changed the way I think about accessibility overall. It's really easy to think about accessibility, and I think if people default to thinking about accessibility as sort of a technical topic because there's so much focus on the markup and other technical things. But I've come to think about it really as a people topic and a cultural topic. And it's really much more about the way you think about designing the web and the way you think about coding the web than the actual code on the keyboard. So I personally am a huge fan of the DeQ University classes, and if I could wave a wand, I would make that a requirement for everyone at the company I work at. The body of knowledge documentation that is available on the IAAP website is also a fantastic resource. There are tons and tons of links in there, and if you took the time to follow all of those links, you could study for months. Beyond that, there are many, many resources on the internet. I definitely would like to put in a plug for Inclusive Design 24. That will be coming up in October, on October 10th. The Paciello Group is instrumental in making that event happen. All of their past events are available online, so you can listen to all of the talks from previous years. And I got some great material for my Accessible Comics blog post off of one of the talks in a prior year's Inclusive Design 24. So there's some really great information there. All of the speakers are experienced speakers, experts in their field, and there's a lot to learn there. Yeah, and there's many podcasts and webinars, as you probably know, since you're listening to a podcast now. A lot of conferences post their videos on the web. So just a lot of ways to keep learning. This is another one that is a little bit tricky, following people on social media. There's definitely a risk of distraction, and for me, that's a real problem. There are days when I can sort of go down the rabbit hole. There are times when I try and check in. I have enough time to try and check in every morning and see what's happening on Twitter. Sometimes I get pretty busy and I may not check in on Twitter for a couple of weeks or maybe even a month or so. But I found that when I do have time to spend on Twitter and following the people that I follow, I always learn a lot. Even this morning, I just checked in for half an hour, came across a bunch of great resources. It's also really a great way to sort of bookmark some of those things by retweeting. Then you can look back through your own stream and see that you retweeted this thing back in February, and that can be an easy way to find it. These are a couple of places where you can find people to follow. The A11y project has a list of who to follow suggestions, and there's also a link here to somebody's top 10 list of accessibility accounts. And a little while ago, in honor of International Women's Day, Carrie Fisher posted an interesting tool that would allow you to analyze the gender balance of your social media follows, the people who you're following. And a lot of people were finding that they were following a good number more men than women. So if you are interested in sort of leveling out your gender balance, if you find that's the case, she has a wonderful list of additional people that you can follow. So yeah, the tool that she posted would analyze your follower and following list for the percentages of men, women, and non-binary. So it's a great way to think about who you're following and maybe round that out a little bit if you think it needs it. Yeah. Go to an accessibility conference. This is a great one. I'm generally not a big conference goer, and I don't necessarily, I think that a lot of the conferences tend to be of a pretty technical nature, but I went to Accessibility Toronto last fall, and I learned more in 2 days than I could have in months. And another great thing about actually going to a conference is that you get to meet some of the people that you've been reading their articles and following their accounts on Twitter. So you'll see a lot of great talks, and you'll also go to some talks that maybe don't rock your world or change your perspective in a great way about something, but you'll be able to listen to talks that just cover things that are, in fact, maybe pretty familiar, but do it in a new way. And I've come to find that it's really valuable to do that. And it helps me think about how I can talk about accessibility with other people. And I think it also helps us to support one another in finding our own voices so that we can all talk about accessibility to a variety of audiences, because I think a lot of being a passionate person about accessibility is about being an evangelist. And if, again, I've said, if it's not something that comes naturally to you, it can be really helpful to sort of find some role models or listen to some other people talk about it. And last but not least, have fun. And if you're going to be an evangelist, you have to be having fun. You're not going to really excite other people about accessibility if you're not having fun with it. It's a long and winding road, so you might as well enjoy the journey. Accessibility, it's hard, and it's kind of a funny thing, because in some ways it seems easy, and conceptually the things seem easy, but it's really, really hard. It's not just a technical topic, it's a people topic. And if it was more of a technical topic, in a way, that would be easier. And I often feel like solving the problems in code, it's the easy part. Winning the hearts and minds of stakeholders can be the more difficult task. So trying to, I guess, convince people that they should think about things in a different way is a hard thing to do. Changing the way you think is hard to do, even if you want to. And I think those of us, if we have spent our whole lives having full sight, or if we've spent our whole lives having full mobility, or having what is reputedly full cognitive functioning, those things drive the way we think. And it can be difficult to convince people to drive their thought process differently in a way that includes everyone. So you have to make it fun. You have to keep it fresh. It's easy to feel a little bit deflated at times, but keep it fun. And so that was 10 ideas, but of course there is obviously a lot more that you can do. You can try and work on your screen reader skills, or you can learn to use another screen reader, or you can learn more about voice activation, or find opportunities to observe and engage with people who are using AT in the wild. Any number of ideas could be posted here, but sort of just in the interest of keeping this manageable, I just put up my first 1 through 10. It would be great to hear other people's ideas about what they would like to have in their top 10, if there's any questions or time for discussion afterwards. So just remember that even though you may not be a ninja yet, it's okay. Just do your best and be awesome. So this is a link that will take you to the PDF that has all of these points and a few notes about each one, and our artist Molly Tave's great illustrations. And that's all I have.
That's awesome. Thank you so much, Abby. I do have a couple of questions here for you.
Great.
The first was, what was the biggest hurdle getting started?
What was the biggest hurdle? I think the biggest hurdle was feeling like knowing how to code was a requirement for understanding accessibility and becoming, I won't say an expert because I don't feel like I am an expert, but becoming sort of an authority on accessibility within my company. And as I've learned, I think a lot, the people who code in my company are smart enough to figure out any of those problems. So I don't need to worry about that. I've learned that just sort of understanding the more conceptual problems is actually a great resource. So yeah, overcoming that feeling that I'm not worthy because I'm not a coder was probably a big hurdle.
All right. And hey, thank you for the check of the last link. Abby, real quick, before I go back, can you go back to your PDF link? I apparently typoed that.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Let me go. There we go.
Allie.
A11y
Okay.
N2N. If
Yeah.
that's not working, eh,
He seems to be having a little technical difficulty there. Maybe that's
okay,
something you can tweet us after the fact.
definitely.
That would be awesome. All right. Well,
I
we
would
do
love to
still
do
have a
that.
few other questions too.
Great.
Um, do you have an example of what you use for an audit template? I know, as you mentioned, there's a lot out there, and it's a great learning activity to analyze what you'd audit. But do you have any examples or pointers for someone just getting started?
Yep. So I actually use just a Google Sheet at this point. So I started with some of the online templates that list everything and tried rearranging them or kind of graying out some parts. And then I found that it was really slowing me down more than speeding me up. And I think another thing to remember is like, I am not going to ever audit every single point in the WCAG in every user agent on every page of a site. And I think it's easy to end up feeling paralyzed by feeling like I can't do everything. And if you just jump in, a lot of the errors that you find on websites are repeated over and over and over again. So especially if you're auditing a site for the first time, you can you can find enough things in a first pass that will keep people busy for quite a while. So I focus on those things. I have a spreadsheet where I'll put in a tab for I'll sample the different kinds of pages. We'll have the different content types and maybe various different interactions that people have to do, or like a sign up or registration process. And I'll go through sampling of each of the kinds of pages and hit each one quick with the wave tool and with the axe tool, and just list out all of those errors for each of the pages. I often find that those page level errors will recur over and over again. So after I've done the home page, a lot of those will show up on the different specialized pages, but then I'll also list the things that come up uniquely on those other pages. Same thing with contrast errors. Once you've hit everything that has all of their color palette demonstrated in it, other than things that have a background image, you'll pretty much take care of that early and then just see the same things over and over. And then I'll have another section in the spreadsheet where I will just start tabbing through each page with the keyboard and just make notes of places where I wasn't able to get to an interaction or I wasn't able to get out of it. And then I will do some basic screen reader testing and see if there are announcements that seem odd or aren't happening properly. So basically those sort of sections on a sampling of each of the pages recorded in a Google Sheet is a really great way to go. And I also have a column where I'll try and make note of all of the standards that apply to each of those errors. And sometimes I really try not to focus on that though. I think that if I focus too much on listing the WCAG standards, chapter and verse for each thing, it makes people focus more on that than on the fact that this just isn't right because people can't use it. So I've gotten away from really focusing on the specific WCAG standard associated with each error. Yeah, so that's basically how I go about it.
That's awesome. A couple of the questions. You mentioned that there's a million tools out there, and there are, and there definitely are. Are there any, two or three that you go to first that are your, in your wheelhouse
Yeah.
there?
Yep. Yeah, certainly the axe tool, the axe tool that I keep in the inspector. I also use the wave tool a lot. Funkify is really fabulous. I have something on that's, again, it's a Mac app. It's called Sim Daltonism, which lets you see anything on your screen as a colorblind user would. So that will allow you to look at things such as PDFs as well. It doesn't have to be in a browser. So that's a really fun tool. A bunch of great color contrast analyzers, but one of the ones that I really like a lot is the WebAIM link checker, because it will look at the contrast of text both against the background and against adjacent text. So if you have someone who wants to have links that have adequate visibility without an underline, you're going to need both of those comparisons, and that's a super handy way to take care of that. I mean, the color contrast checkers, there's so many of them, and they're a lot of fun. Some are good if you're starting with a fresh color palette. Some are good if you just need to try and adjust an existing palette. Tana Guru is great if you just need to adjust a little bit. I can also throw out a link. I had a resource sheet in the earlier talk that I gave, and it's been probably a year since I updated that, but I'll tweet out a link to that too.
Awesome, great, because I got a handful of them, but not very many. So thank you so much.
Great.
And then finally, at the end, you mentioned something about keeping it fun. You did say something about the challenges, especially a lot of us have remote teams and such. What are some of the things you do to try to keep it fun for yourself when you're feeling a little bit overwhelmed?
That Slack channel that we have is a great opportunity for me. I just get excited about the oddest things. So I'll put, something in the Slack channel, put in a few great emojis. Really the most fun thing I think is going through the Twitter feed and seeing what other people are talking about. So that helps keep it fun for me. Keeping it fun for other people at the company is, I'm not sure how much fun they think I am. I think maybe they're entertained by me. I hope they're entertained by me and the way I get pretty excited about these things. But, I definitely have fun just sort of following the different articles that people write. And I'm loving finding more articles that are, I think what makes it more fun for me is actually getting more away from the real hardcore technical stuff, because that's not my strong point. So yeah, I'd say find what makes it fun for you. Another thing that makes it fun is finding a new tool. I've found this great bookmarklet that lets me test the zoom and text spacing. And wow, to me, that's a good time to start going out and testing pages and with a new tool. So I guess it depends on how nerdy you are. But yeah, that's one of the things that makes it fun for me. And it helps that sometimes I have a little bit of a free time, that I don't have to be heads down on work all the time. And I have a chance to go and poke at some of our pages with a new tool. But yeah, I think just being able to finger paint a little bit and go exploring is a great way to keep it light and keep it fun. So hopefully you have a little bit of time in your schedule that you don't have to bill out every hour, and that's how you get to sort of expand your mind a little bit.
I love the finger painting analogy. Wonderful. Well, I think I've checked our resources here, and I think those are all of the questions. Do you have any closing thoughts you wanted to share with the team today?
There are just, sometimes you just feel like you can do very little. And I think that the small things add up. I had a conversation with somebody at DrupalCon that initially was a little bit disheartening, because I told him that I work as an accessibility specialist, and he thought, oh, that's really sort of a niche area. That's not really something that comes up a lot. And my heart just sank, and we talked a little bit, and he's like, well, tell me how it can make a difference, or, what are a few things that I can do? And I said, navigate through your pages, make sure you can interact with everything. And at the end of a 15-minute conversation, he says, okay, well, you've had an impact. This is good. So I think that there are little nuggets out there. And even if you can make a little bit of a change, it's so helpful. WebAIM recently did an accessibility analysis of the top, just the home pages on the top 1 million sites on the web. And there are so many errors out there, and they're so common, and there are things that are so fixable. So just go out there and get it.
Awesome. Go out there and get it. Perfect closing thoughts. Well, thank you, Abby, for joining us, and thank you for those who participate today. It's been really great. Give us a few days, and we will be having this up on our YouTube channel. So again, make sure to subscribe if you don't already do. And we'll be posting the link on our Twitter. Thank you all very much, and I hope you have a fantastic day.